In a small town tucked away in the mountains, people spoke in whispers about a man who lived alone, deep in the woods. Everyone called him the Mountain Man. No one really knew his real name, and most folks preferred it that way. He was a mystery. Some said he was dangerous, while others thought he was just lonely and didn't want to be bothered. The Mountain Man had been part of the town's stories for years. Older people told tales about how he once fought in wars and came back a different person. Some said he was a hunter who knew every tree and animal in the forest. Kids grew up scared of him, warned by their parents to behave or the Mountain Man might come for them. The mountain was his home, and the people in town stayed away from it, especially after dark. Among the town's residents was a boy who didn't quite fit in. He was 14 years old, a little overweight, and always the target of teasing at school. He wasn't mean or troublemaker, just quiet and shy. Many kids called him names behind his back. He tried to ignore it, but it hurt more than he showed. His clothes didn't fit well, and he hated gym class the most. Sometimes he wished he could just disappear. At home, things weren't perfect either. His parents worked hard but argued a lot. He often felt alone, like nobody really understood him. The house was small and filled with tension. Sometimes when the teasing at school became too much, he would lie awake at night, wishing he had a place where he belonged. The woods outside the town seemed like a faraway world, quiet, wild, and free from all the noise. One afternoon, after a particularly bad day at school, the boy's frustration reached its peak. Some kids had laughed loudly when he tried to join a game, making fun of his weight and awkwardness. He ran out of the schoolyard without saying a word and kept running until the buildings disappeared behind him. Before he knew it, he had reached the edge of the forest. The forest looked different up close, dark, thick with trees, and a little scary. But it also felt peaceful. The boy didn't plan where he was going. He just wanted to get away, to be somewhere nobody could hurt him. He walked deeper and deeper into the woods, the sounds of the town growing quieter behind him. Birds chirped softly and the wind moved through the leaves. For a moment he felt calm. After walking for a while, he realized he didn't know how to get back. The trees all looked the same, and the paths were narrow and twisting. A small worry began to grow in his chest. He wasn't sure if he should be afraid or proud for making it so far. The sun was starting to lower in the sky, and he knew night was coming. Then he saw something unusual, a small old shack hidden among the trees. It looked like it had been there for years, made of weathered wood and covered in moss. Curiosity mixed with fear made him take a few steps closer. He could hear the soft sound of water dripping somewhere nearby. He thought about turning around, but something kept him moving forward. Suddenly, a tall figure appeared at the door of the shack. It was the Mountain Man. His beard was thick and gray, and his eyes were sharp but tired. The boy froze. All the stories, all the warnings from his parents rushed through his mind. He expected anger or danger. Instead, the man simply stared at him for a moment. Without a word, the Mountain Man reached out his hand and said quietly, "Give me $1." The boy's heart pounded. He didn't understand why the man wanted money, and more than that, he didn't have much. The few bills he had were mostly for snacks or school supplies. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a single dollar bill. His fingers trembled as he held it out. The man took the dollar slowly, like it meant something more than just money. Then, without another word, the Mountain Man turned and disappeared inside the shack. The boy wanted to run, to leave right then and there. But the man's voice stopped him before he could move. "Stay, it's not safe out there after dark." The boy looked around. He knew the forest was full of wild animals and that the night could be dangerous. Hesitantly, he stepped inside the shack. Inside, it was dim but warm. The smell of wood smoke and earth filled the air. There were rough wooden chairs and a small table, but not much else. The Mountain Man sat down across from him, still quiet. The boy felt awkward, but also a strange sense of safety. That night, they ate simple food, canned beans and fresh water from a nearby spring. The Mountain Man didn't ask many questions. The boy didn't say much either. But as the hours passed, the fear inside him slowly faded. Outside, the sounds of the forest grew louder. The hoot of an owl, the rustle of leaves, and the distant howl of a coyote. The boy realized he had never really been alone before. He was seeing the world in a new way. The next morning, the Mountain Man taught the boy how to make a fire using dry sticks and stones. His hands were rough but steady, showing the boy carefully. They walked to a nearby stream where the Mountain Man showed him how to catch small fish. The boy was clumsy at first, but he laughed when he finally caught one. Over the next few days, the boy learned more: how to track animal footprints, how to find safe plants to eat, and how to stay quiet so as not to scare the wildlife. The mountain man didn't say much, but his actions spoke volumes. He was teaching the boy something far more important than survival. He was teaching him respect for nature and himself. During quiet moments, the boy noticed the man watching him carefully. The fear he had at first was slowly turning into something else. He wondered about the man's life, about why he lived alone and why he had taken that dollar from him in the first place. One afternoon, the boy finally asked, "Why did you take my dollar?" The mountain man looked at him for a long time before answering. "I wanted to see if you'd give something to a man everyone says to fear. That's more important than money." The boy thought about this. The dollar wasn't really about money at all. It was about trust and kindness. He realized he wasn't just a scared kid lost in the woods anymore. He was learning how to be brave. The days passed and the boy's body grew stronger. He felt lighter, not just in weight but in spirit. The bullying and pain from before seemed farther away. The mountain man, once just a scary story, became someone who believed in him. The boy knew he couldn't stay forever. He missed his family and the town, even if it wasn't perfect. But he also knew he would never be the same. As he prepared to leave, the mountain man said simply, "Come back if you want to learn more." The boy smiled, feeling something he never had before: hope. He stepped back onto the path leading home, ready to face whatever came next. The boy didn't know what to expect when he stepped back onto the path that led out of the woods. The mountain man's words echoed in his mind: "Come back if you want to learn more." Those words felt like a promise, but also a challenge. He walked carefully, making sure to remember the way. The trees looked less frightening now, almost like old friends who had shared a secret with him. As he neared the edge of the forest, he could hear the faint sounds of the town again: cars passing by, voices, and the distant bark of a dog. It all felt strange, almost like stepping into a different world. When the boy reached the town, the first thing he noticed was how people looked at him. Some faces were worried, others surprised. The adults whispered to one another, and some kids gave him curious glances. He was sure they had heard about his disappearance. The search parties, the worried parents, it was all too much to take in. At home, his parents were relieved but also upset. They didn't say much at first, just hugged him tight. The boy felt strange in their arms, like he had changed while they stayed the same. The house seemed smaller, the air thicker. It was the same place, but he felt different. School was even harder. The teasing didn't stop, but the boy stood taller. He didn't say much, but inside he felt a quiet strength he hadn't had before. The mountain man's lessons were with him, even if no one else could see it. Days turned into weeks. The boy found himself thinking about the mountain man more often. Who was this man really? Why did he live alone in the woods? The stories told in town didn't match the man he had met. The man was quiet but kind in his own way. He didn't judge or laugh at the boy. Instead, he shared skills and gave him confidence. One afternoon, the boy decided to go back. The thought of seeing the mountain man again gave him courage. He told his parents he was going to the store, then slipped away down the familiar path toward the forest. The woods welcomed him like an old friend. The boy felt excitement and nerves all mixed together. When he reached the shack, he called out softly. The door creaked open, and there stood the mountain man, looking surprised but not angry. "You came back," the man said, voice rough but steady. "I wanted to learn more," the boy replied. The mountain man nodded and stepped aside. "Come in." Inside, the shack felt warmer this time. The boy noticed small things he hadn't before: a stack of old books, a worn-out blanket, and a collection of tools hanging neatly on the wall. It was clear the man lived simply but had made a home for himself. The mountain man didn't waste time with words. He took the boy outside to the edge of a small clearing. "Today I'll teach you to track," he said. The boy watched carefully as the man pointed to prints in the soft dirt. Deer, rabbit, maybe even a bear. "Every creature leaves a story behind," the man explained. "You just have to know how to read it." The boy tried to copy the steps, moving quietly and looking closely at the ground. He wasn't perfect, but he was learning. And watched, offering small corrections and encouragement. As the sun moved lower in the sky, they sat by a fire the mountain man made. The boy felt a calm he hadn't known in a long time. The man talked about the forest, about seasons and animals and the importance of patience. Slowly, the boy began to ask questions. "Why do you live out here alone?" he said softly. The mountain man looked away for a moment, then answered, "I chose this life after many years of pain and loss. People hurt me. I hurt others. The forest doesn't ask questions or judge." The boy nodded, understanding more than the man might have guessed. "I think I get it," he said. "Sometimes people can be hard to be around." They sat in silence for a while, listening to the sounds of the woods. The boy felt like he was part of something bigger than himself. Over the next few visits, the mountain man continued to teach the boy new skills. He showed him how to find clean water, how to build a shelter from branches, and how to use a simple knife safely. Each lesson was hard, but the boy felt proud when he succeeded. One day, the mountain man handed him a worn leather bag. Inside was a small, rusty compass. "This will help you find your way," he said. "But remember, the most important compass is the one inside you." The boy smiled and thanked him. The man's words stuck with him. He realized that finding his way wasn't just about maps or directions. It was about trusting himself. Back in town, the boy's friends noticed changes too. He wasn't the same scared kid anymore. He spoke with more confidence, helped others, and even stood up to bullies in a quiet but firm way. Some of the kids started to respect him, though the teasing never completely stopped. The boy knew the mountain man's lessons were helping him more than he could say. He felt stronger, not just in body but in spirit. He was learning that courage didn't mean never being afraid. It meant facing fear and moving forward anyway. One afternoon, as the boy prepared to leave the shack after a long day, the mountain man surprised him. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a folded dollar bill, the same one the boy had given him weeks ago. "I kept this," the man said. "It's a reminder." The boy took the dollar, feeling its worn edges. He realized that this simple piece of paper had become something much bigger, a symbol of trust and connection between two people who had both been scared and lonely. The mountain man smiled, a rare softness in his eyes. "You've come a long way. Keep coming back if you want," the boy nodded. He knew this was only the beginning. The days grew shorter and the boy's visits became less frequent as school and life kept him busy. But every time he felt lost or unsure, he thought of the mountain man, the forest, and that dollar bill. It was like a secret strength inside him, waiting to be called upon. One winter evening, the boy sat by the fireplace at home, staring at the dollar bill pinned to his bedroom wall. The room was quiet, but inside him a storm of thoughts and feelings raged. He thought about the man who lived alone in the woods, about the lessons he had learned, and about the person he was becoming. He realized something important, that sometimes the people we fear the most have the most to teach us. That kindness can be hidden behind a rough voice or a hard face. That trust and courage start with small steps. The boy smiled to himself. He didn't know what the future held, but he felt ready. Ready to face the challenges ahead, ready to be brave, and ready to keep learning from the mountain man, who had become much more than just a story. The boy's visits to the mountain man grew deeper and more meaningful over time. Each trip into the woods was like stepping into a new world, a world where the noise of the town faded away, and the lessons of the forest filled his mind. One cool morning, the mountain man stood outside his shack waiting quietly. His face was serious, but his eyes held a spark of something the boy hadn't seen before. "Today," he said, "you will learn how to listen." The boy looked puzzled. "How do you listen?" The man smiled slightly. "Not just with your ears. With your whole body. The forest speaks if you pay attention." They moved slowly through the trees. The mountain man stopped often, pointing out small sounds, the rustling of leaves, the snap of a twig, the distant call of a bird. "These sounds tell stories," he explained. "They warn of danger or signal a change in the weather. They show where animals are moving." The boy closed his eyes for a moment, trying to focus on the quiet around him. It was harder than he thought. In town, he was always surrounded by noise, cars, voices, music. Here, the silence was full of meaning. After a while, the mountain man led him to a small clearing. There, in the soft dirt, were fresh animal tracks. The man knelt down and traced the shape with his finger. "Look closely," he said. "These are rabbit tracks. The size, the pattern, it tells me the rabbit was running fast, probably scared by something nearby." The boy studied the prints, trying to see the story the man described. He realized that the forest was like a book and every sign was a word or sentence. That afternoon, they practiced moving quietly through the woods. The mountain man showed the boy how to step lightly, place his feet carefully, and hold his breath when needed. The boy stumbled a few times but laughed at himself. The man didn't laugh. He just nodded approvingly. When they returned to the shack, the boy was tired but happy. He had learned something new and important. It wasn't just about survival. It was about understanding the world around him in a way no one in town had ever taught him. Days passed, and the boy found himself thinking about the forest even when he was at school. He remembered the sounds, the smells, the feeling of quiet strength that came from being out there. It was like a secret part of him had awakened. One afternoon, the boy was at home when the phone rang. It was a voice from school, a teacher asking about his absence from class. The boy realized how much he had missed, how much he had fallen behind. He felt torn. He wanted to keep visiting the mountain man, but he also knew he had to face his responsibilities. The mountain man's lessons had given him courage, but now he had to apply that courage in the town. The next day at school, the boy made a choice. When some kids started teasing him during lunch, he didn't run or stay silent. Instead, he looked at them calmly and said, "Leave me alone." It was a small moment, but it felt huge to him. The bullies stopped, surprised by his quiet confidence. Other students noticed too. Some nodded in approval. It was as if the boy had become someone new, not just in the woods, but in the world he lived in every day. That evening, the boy returned to the shack. He told the mountain man about school, about the teasing, and how he had stood up for himself. The mountain man listened carefully. "Standing up is hard," he said, "but it's one of the most important skills you can learn." They talked late into the night, the boy asking questions about the man's life, the forest, and the lessons he still needed to learn. The mountain man told stories from his past, of battles fought, mistakes made, and the pain of losing people he cared about. The boy saw a side of the man he hadn't seen before, a side filled with regret but also hope. "You see," the man said, "everyone carries scars. Some are on the outside, but the hardest ones are inside." The boy nodded, thinking about his own scars, both physical and emotional. He realized that the mountain man wasn't just teaching him how to survive in the forest. He was teaching him how to survive life. Over the next weeks, the lessons deepened. The mountain man taught the boy how to fish with bare hands in the stream, how to recognize edible plants, and how to care for injuries using plants and herbs. One day, as they sat by the fire, the boy asked, "Do you ever get lonely?" The man looked into the flames for a long moment. "Sometimes," he said, "but loneliness is better than the pain of people who don't understand you." The boy understood that feeling well. He thought about the teasing at school, the arguments at home, and the times he had felt invisible. "But," the mountain man continued, "there is also strength in being alone. You learn to listen, to think, to be patient. You find yourself." The boy smiled softly. He felt like he was starting to find himself piece by piece. As winter approached, the forest changed. The leaves fell, the air grew colder, and snow dusted the ground. The mountain man taught the boy how to prepare for the cold, how to find dry wood, how to stay warm, and how to respect the quiet beauty of winter. On one snowy day, the boy slipped and fell while climbing a small hill. He twisted his ankle and couldn't walk properly. The mountain man didn't panic. Instead, he carefully wrapped the boy's ankle with cloth and helped him back to the shack. The boy was frustrated. "I can't believe this happened," he said. "I'm so clumsy." The mountain man shook his head. "You're learning. Every mistake teaches you something." That night, as the boy rested, he thought about all he had been through. He wasn't the scared, lost kid anymore. He was someone who faced fears, learned from mistakes, and kept moving forward. The mountain man stayed by his side, quiet but strong. The boy realized that despite the man's rough exterior, he cared deeply. Before long, the boy's ankle healed. He was back on his feet, stronger than before. He felt ready to face the challenges ahead, knowing that he wasn't alone. One day, the mountain man handed the boy a small wooden box. Inside was a simple knife, handmade and sharp. "This is for you," he said. "Use it well and wisely." The boy accepted it with respect. He knew it was more than a tool. It was a symbol of trust and growth. As the days grew colder and the bow, he prepared to leave the woods for the winter. the mountain man gave him one last piece of advice. Remember, courage isn't the absence of fear. It's the choice to keep going even when you're afraid. The boy looked into the man's eyes and nodded. He knew he would carry those words with him forever. Leaving the woods that day, the boy felt a deep gratitude. The mountain man had taken a scared, lonely kid and shown him a new way to live. Not just in the forest, but in the world. The boy knew his journey was far from over. There were still many lessons to learn, many fears to face. But now he had something stronger than fear: hope. The boy woke early that morning, the cold air from outside slipping through the cracks in the shack's walls. Winter was coming fast and the world outside was changing. The trees were bare and the ground was frozen hard. But inside, the fire crackled, and the mountain man was already awake, quietly moving about. The boy wrapped himself tighter in the old blanket and sat near the fire. He looked at the mountain man and wondered what the next lesson would be. The man didn't say much, just handed him a small bundle of dried herbs and some strips of bark. "These will keep you warm," the man said simply, "and heal when you need it." The boy nodded, grateful. The forest had already taught him so much, but he knew there was still a long way to go. Winter was a different kind of challenge. Quiet and slow, but just as powerful as the storms of summer. They spent the day gathering wood, moving carefully over the frozen earth. The mountain man showed the boy how to find dry branches even when everything looked wet and frozen. The boy learned to listen to the crack of ice underfoot and to watch the sky for signs of coming weather. At night, the mountain man shared stories by the fire. They weren't always happy stories, some were sad, full of loss and mistakes. But they were honest, and the boy listened closely. He learned that life wasn't just about success or strength, but about facing pain and still moving forward. One evening, as the fire burned low, the boy asked the mountain man, "Did you ever want to live in the town? To be with other people?" The man was quiet for a long time before answering. "I did once, but people hurt each other in ways I couldn't forget. Here I find peace, but I don't want you to live alone like me." The boy thought about that. The mountain man was kind, wise, and strong, but also lonely. He wondered if he would end up the same way. The thought scared him. The next morning, the boy woke to find the mountain man gone. At first, panic rose in his chest, but then he saw a note on the table, written in rough handwriting. "Gone to check traps. Back soon, stay warm." The boy waited, watching the door. Hours passed. The cold outside seemed to grow sharper. When the mountain man returned, he carried a small sack filled with food: nuts, dried meat, and a few root vegetables. The boy's stomach growled. The mountain man smiled, setting the sack down carefully. "We must prepare for the deep winter," he said. "Food will be scarce and the nights long." Together, they stored the food in a safe place and reinforced the shack's walls with extra bark and branches. The boy worked hard, feeling the weight of responsibility. He wanted to help, to show he was not a child anymore. As the days passed, the cold grew harsher. Snow covered the ground, and the boy learned how to move carefully through the white forest. The mountain man showed him how to watch for animal tracks in the snow and how to stay hidden from predators. One day, while they were outside, the boy spotted a small injured bird lying in the snow. Its wing was bent and it couldn't fly. The boy's heart ached. He wanted to help but wasn't sure how. The mountain man gently took the bird and wrapped it in a cloth. "We will care for it," he said. "The forest takes care of those who respect it." Inside the shack, they made a small nest for the bird and fed it tiny bits of food. The boy watched as the bird slowly grew stronger. It was a reminder that even in the harshest conditions, life could find a way. The boy thought about his own life, how he had felt weak and lost, but was growing stronger every day. The mountain man's quiet strength inspired him. One evening, after a long day of work, the boy sat by the fire and asked, "Will you teach me how to live on my own someday?" The mountain man looked at him with a serious gaze. "Yes, but not yet. First, you must learn patience, respect, and how to listen. Then you will be ready." The boy understood. The forest wasn't just a place to survive. It was a school for life. Winter stretched on. The boy learned to make warm clothes from animal skins the mountain man taught him to prepare. He learned how to move silently over ice and how to build shelters that could hold off the coldest winds. Each lesson was hard, but the boy found joy in the challenge. He no longer felt like the scared, lonely child who had first wandered into the woods. He was becoming someone who could face the world with courage and kindness. One night, the boy dreamt of the town. The voices, the teasing, the loneliness. But in the dream, he also saw himself walking into the forest, standing tall and strong beside the mountain man. He woke up with a start but felt a quiet peace inside. Spring was coming, and the boy knew it was almost time to return to the town. But this time, he wasn't the same boy who had run away from his problems. He was ready to face them, armed with the lessons of the forest and the strength he had found inside. The mountain man gave him a small, carved wooden pendant before he left, a symbol of their bond and the boy's journey. "Remember," the man said, "the forest will always be here, and so will I." The boy nodded, feeling a deep gratitude. He promised himself he would never forget the man who had taken $1 from a scared kid and turned him into someone brave. Walking back through the forest, the boy felt the sun warm his face. The town was waiting, but he carried the woods inside him now, a place of peace, courage, and hope. The boy stepped out of the forest and onto the familiar road that led back to the town. The sunlight warmed his face, and the sounds of life, cars passing, birds singing, people talking, felt different now. It was as if he was hearing them for the first time, with new ears and a new heart. He carried the small wooden pendant the mountain man had given him around his neck. It was rough but beautiful, a symbol of everything he had learned and the journey he had taken. The boy looked down at it and felt a quiet strength. The town looked the same on the outside, but inside the boy was different. He knew that the challenges he had faced in the woods had changed him. He wasn't the scared, lonely kid who had walked away weeks ago. He was someone who had learned courage, patience, and respect. At school, the boy found it wasn't easy to fit back in. Some kids still teased him, and the teachers expected him to catch up quickly. But the boy faced these challenges with the lessons he had learned from the mountain man. He took one step at a time, staying calm and steady. When the bullies came close, he didn't run. He stood tall, looked them in the eye, and said quietly, "Leave me alone." It wasn't a shout or a fight. It was confidence. And slowly the teasing began to fade. The boy's parents noticed the change too. They saw that he was quieter, more thoughtful, and stronger in his own way. They didn't say much, but the boy felt their pride. One afternoon, the boy found himself walking toward the edge of town, toward the woods where the mountain man lived. He wasn't sure what he expected. Maybe to see the man again, or maybe just to feel the peace of the forest one more time. As he reached the edge, he saw a figure standing by the trees. It was the mountain man, watching quietly. The boy smiled and walked toward him. "You came back," the man said, voice rough but kind. The boy nodded. "I had to. I needed to say thank you." They stood side by side, looking out at the forest. The boy felt grateful, not just for the lessons, but for the friendship that had grown between them. The mountain man handed the boy a small, folded piece of paper. "This is for you," he said, "a map. For when you need it." The boy unfolded the paper carefully. It was a simple drawing of the woods, marking safe paths and places of interest. But it was more than a map. It was a gift of trust and care. "Thank you," the boy said softly. "You're ready now," the mountain man said. "Ready for the world outside and the one inside you." The boy smiled, feeling a new sense of hope. Over the next weeks and months, the boy continued to grow. He worked hard at school, made new friends, and found his place in the town. But he never forgot the mountain man or the forest. Whenever life felt hard or confusing, the boy would touch the wooden pendant around his neck or look at the map. He would remember the lessons of patience, courage, and kindness. One day, the boy was walking home from school when he saw a group of younger kids gathered around a small fire near the edge of the woods. They were curious, a little scared, and unsure. The boy walked over and sat down beside them. He told them stories of the forest, of the mountain man, and the lessons he had learned. He showed them how to listen to the sounds around them and how to watch for signs in the earth. The kids listened closely, their eyes wide with wonder. The boy realized something important, that the lessons he had learned weren't just for him. They were meant to be shared. The mountain man had taught him that courage and kindness could change lives, and now it was his turn to pass those lessons on. As the years went by, the boy grew into a young man. He never forgot the mountain man, who remained a quiet presence at the edge of the woods. Their friendship stayed strong, even as life pulled them in different directions. The young man often returned to the forest not just to learn but to remember. He knew that the true strength came from within, from the courage to face fear, the patience to grow slowly, and the kindness to see the good in others. One spring, many years later, the young man walked deep into the forest and found the mountain man sitting by the fire. The man looked older, his face lined with time and experience, but his eyes still held that quiet strength. They talked for a long time, sharing stories and memories. The mountain man smiled and said, "You have become what I hoped you would, a strong, kind person who knows the value of the forest and the world." The young man thanked him. "You gave me more than lessons. You gave me hope." The mountain man nodded. "And you gave me something too, a reminder that even the quietest voices can make a difference." As the sun set over the trees, the two friends sat together in peace. The forest around them was alive with the sounds of life and the promise of new beginnings. The young man knew that his journey was not over. There would be new challenges, new fears to face, and new lessons to learn, but he was ready. He carried the mountain man's wisdom with him, a light in the darkness guiding him forward, and so, the story of the feared mountain man and the fat teen who gave him $1 became more than just a tale. It became a story of courage, friendship, and the power of kindness, a story that would live on in the hearts of those who dared to listen. Time passed, like the slow, steady flow of a river. The young man had grown, but his heart still carried the lessons of the mountain man deep inside. Life in the town continued around him, busy and loud, but the quiet strength from the woods never left him. Sometimes, when the world felt heavy, the young man would walk back to the edge of the forest. The trees welcomed him like old friends, and the air smelled of earth and rain. It was a place where he could think, breathe, and remember who he was. One morning, the young man stood near the forest path and saw a small group of children playing. They were noisy and full of energy, chasing each other and laughing. But one boy stood apart, watching quietly. He was shy and a little awkward, like the young man had once been. The boy's clothes were too big and his cheeks were round and red from the cold. He looked lost, unsure of where to go or what to do. The young man approached him slowly, remembering how hard it had been to feel like he didn't belong. He smiled gently and said, "Want to come with me? I know a place where you can learn some things." The boy's eyes widened. "Really? But I don't know anything about the forest." "That's okay," the young man replied. "I'll show you." So the boy followed, stepping carefully on the path. The young man led him deep into the woods, where the air was fresh and the world was quiet except for the sounds of birds and wind. They reached a small clearing where the sunlight filtered through the leaves. The young man sat down on a fallen log and motioned for the boy to sit beside him. "Here's the first lesson," he said softly. "Listen, not just with your ears, but with your heart. The forest has many stories, and if you pay attention, it will tell you what you need to know." The boy closed his eyes and took a deep breath. Slowly he began to notice the sounds. The rustling of leaves, the chirping of birds, even the gentle creaking of branches. His face relaxed and a small smile appeared. Days turned into weeks. The boy returned to the woods with the young man, learning how to move quietly, how to find food, and how to respect the world around him. The young man taught him the things the mountain man had taught him years before. One afternoon, as the sun set behind the hills, the boy asked, "Why do you help me?" The young man looked at him and said, "Because someone once helped me when I needed it most. Now it's my turn to pass it on." The boy nodded, understanding more than words could say. Their friendship grew strong. The boy started to believe in himself, slowly shedding the fears that had held him back. He learned that courage wasn't about being fearless, but about trying even when you were scared. One winter evening, as snow blanketed the ground, the boy and the young man sat by a fire. The boy looked up at the stars and asked, "Will the mountain man ever teach me like he did you?" The young man smiled and said, "He's part of the forest now, but his lessons live in both of us. And someday, when you're ready, you'll share those lessons with others." The boy thought about that. He felt a warmth inside, not just from the fire, but from the hope growing in his heart. Spring came again, and with it, new challenges. The boy faced troubles at school and worries at home, but he faced them with the strength he had found in the woods. The young man watched him closely, proud of how far the boy had come. He knew the journey wasn't easy, but it was worth every step. One day the boy found the young man waiting near the edge of the forest. holding a small wooden box. Inside was a simple, sharp knife, the same kind the mountain man had once given him. "This is for you," the young man said, "a symbol of trust and a reminder that you are stronger than you think." The boy accepted the gift with a grateful heart. Together, they walked back into the forest, ready to face whatever came next. The boy, now growing into a young man, felt the weight of the wooden knife in his hand. It was a symbol, a promise, and a reminder. He looked at the young man beside him, grateful for the trust and the lessons passed down. The forest around them was alive with sounds, the chirping of birds, the rustling of leaves, and the soft whisper of the wind. It was a place of peace, but also a place where life demanded respect and attention. The young man spoke softly. "This knife is more than just a tool. It's a reminder that you can shape your own path, but you must do so with care and thought." The boy nodded, feeling the weight of the words. He understood that strength wasn't about force, but about knowing when and how to use it. Days passed, and the boy learned to use the knife carefully, crafting simple tools and learning how to prepare food and make shelter. Each task was a step toward independence, a piece of the puzzle that formed his new life. One afternoon, they came across a small stream where the water ran clear and cold. The boy knelt to drink, watching the fish swim beneath the surface. The young man smiled and said, "The forest gives us many gifts, but we must always remember to take only what we need." The boy looked up, thinking about the lessons of respect and balance that had been taught to him. He realized that living in the world meant more than just surviving. It meant living with kindness and care for everything around him. Winter was returning, and the forest was preparing for the long months ahead. The boy and the young man worked together to store food and build stronger shelters. The boy was no longer the scared child who had first walked into the woods. He was growing into someone who could face the cold, the silence, and the challenges of life with courage. One night, as they sat by the fire, the boy asked, "Do you think the mountain man ever regrets being alone all those years?" The young man looked into the flames and thought for a moment. "Maybe," he said quietly. "But he found peace in the forest, and he helped me find it too. Sometimes being alone means finding yourself." The boy nodded, feeling a deeper understanding. He knew that the mountain man's lessons were about more than survival. They were about finding a place in the world, even if it was a quiet one. Spring came again, and with it, new life. The boy and the young man found themselves helping others who had lost their way. They shared the lessons of the forest, how to listen, how to respect, and how to be brave. The boy realized that the forest was not just a place, but a way of living, a way that could bring peace and strength to anyone willing to learn. One day, as the sun set behind the trees, the boy stood alone in the clearing, holding the wooden knife. He thought about the journey he had taken from a scared, lonely child to someone who could face the world with hope. He knew the path ahead would not always be easy, but he was ready. The forest had taught him that true strength came from kindness, patience, and courage. And with that knowledge, the boy, now a young man, stepped forward into his future, carrying the spirit of the mountain man and the lessons of the woods in his heart. The young man felt the familiar rough bark under his fingers as he traced the path back into the forest. The trees towered above, their branches swaying gently in the breeze. This place had become a part of him, more than just a forest. It was a teacher, a friend, and a reminder of all he had learned. As he walked deeper into the woods, memories filled his mind. How scared and unsure he had been when he first arrived, and how much he had grown since then. The lessons of patience, kindness, and courage weren't just words. They were the roots that held him steady in a changing world. Ahead, the small clearing where he had first sat with the mountain man and the boy who had followed him now waited quietly. It was a place where stories were shared and lives were changed. The young man sat on the same fallen log, breathing in the fresh air. He reached into his pocket and pulled out the wooden pendant that had been passed down. It was worn smooth from years of carrying it close. He thought about the mountain man, the quiet, strong man who had once taken $1 from a scared child and given him so much more in return. The man's lessons had shaped not just his survival, but his heart. The young man smiled softly, knowing that those lessons had found a new home in him. Suddenly, he heard footsteps. Turning, he saw the boy, the one who had come to the forest shy and unsure. now standing tall holding the small wooden knife that had been given to him. The boy's eyes met his, full of hope and trust. "I've been waiting for you," he said. Together they sat by the fire, the flames dancing and casting warm light around them. The young man began to tell stories of the forest, of the mountain man, and of the journey they had all shared. He spoke of the lessons learned, not just about survival, but about life, about kindness, patience, courage, and respect. The boy listened closely, his face glowing in the firelight. He asked questions, curious and eager to understand more. As the night deepened, more people arrived, children and adults who had heard of the forest's magic and the lessons it held. They came seeking guidance, a place to learn, and a chance to find peace. The young man welcomed them all. He showed them how to listen to the world around them, how to respect the earth, and how to find strength inside themselves. The forest became a gathering place, a school without walls where stories were shared and friendships formed. One day, as the seasons changed, the young man stood at the edge of the woods, watching the new group of learners prepare for their first journey into the forest. He saw the same nervous excitement he had once felt, mixed with hope. He stepped forward and placed the wooden pendant around the neck of the newest learner, a small boy with wide eyes and a curious heart. "Remember," he said softly, "the forest is not just a place. It's a way of living. Listen with your heart and it will guide you." The boy smiled, clutching the pendant tightly. The young man felt a deep peace. The lessons of the mountain man lived on, not just in him, but in all those who came to learn, and so, the story that had begun with a feared mountain man and a scared boy who gave him $1 continued, growing stronger with each new heart it touched. The forest, the lessons, and the friendship had become a light, a reminder that even in the darkest times, kindness and courage could lead the way. The young man knew that the journey was never truly over. There would always be new challenges, new fears to face, and new lessons to learn. But with the spirit of the mountain man and the wisdom of the forest inside him, he was ready to face whatever came next. The young man stood at the edge of the forest, watching the sunlight filter through the branches and dance on the ground. The woods were alive with the sounds of spring, the songs of birds, the rustling of leaves, and the quiet hum of insects. He felt a quiet peace inside him, a feeling that had grown stronger with every step he had taken on this journey. The lessons from the mountain man, the time spent with the boy who had become his friend, and the years of learning had all shaped who he was. Today was different, though. Today he was not alone. A small group had gathered behind him, children and adults alike. Some were new faces, curious and eager to learn. Others were familiar, returning to deepen their connection with the forest. The young man looked around at them, feeling the responsibility of the role he now held. He was no longer just a student of the forest. He had become a guide, a teacher and a keeper of the stories. He spoke softly. "The forest teaches us many things. It teaches patience, kindness, courage, and respect. It shows us how to live in balance with the world around us." The group listened intently, their eyes wide with wonder. Many had come from the town, feeling lost or overwhelmed by the noise and hurry of everyday life. Here in the forest, they found something different, a chance to slow down and connect. The young man led them deeper into the woods, pointing out the small details that told stories. A bent branch showed where a deer had passed. A circle of stones marked a place where people had gathered long ago. He showed them how to move quietly, how to watch and listen without disturbing. He taught them how to find food and water and how to make shelter that blended with the earth. But most of all, he taught them to listen, not just with their ears but with their hearts. As the days passed, the group learned to trust the forest and themselves. They shared stories around the fire, laughed together, and helped one another through moments of doubt. The young man watched with pride as the shy and scared faces began to shine with confidence. He remembered his own journey, how the mountain man's lessons had changed him from a frightened child into someone who could face the world. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, the young man sat beside the fire and told the story of the mountain man, the man who had seemed so feared but had a heart full of kindness. He spoke of the $1 the boy had given, and how that small act had started a chain of trust and friendship. He explained that sometimes the smallest things could change lives. The listeners sat quietly, feeling the warmth of the fire and the power of the story. After the tale, a young girl raised her hand. "Do you think the mountain man would be proud of you?" The young man smiled gently. "I hope so," he said. "He taught me that strength comes from kindness and courage. Every day I try to live by those lessons." The girl nodded thoughtfully. As night settled over the forest, the group lay under the stars, feeling connected to the earth and to one another. The young man looked up at the sky and felt a deep gratitude for the mountain man, for the forest, and for the journey that had brought him here. He knew the path ahead would still have challenges, but he was no longer afraid. The forest had taught him how to face fear, how to be patient, and how to find hope. And now, he was sharing those gifts with others, helping them find their own strength. The story that began with a feared mountain man and a scared boy who gave him $1 had grown into something bigger, a story of community, trust, and the power of kindness. As dawn broke, the young man stood and looked at the faces around him, faces filled with hope and courage. He knew that the forest's lessons would live on, passed from heart to heart, guiding each person as they found their own way. And with that knowledge, he stepped forward into the new day, ready to walk the path ahead, carrying the spirit of the mountain man and the forest inside him. The forest was quiet in the early morning light. Dew covered the leaves and grass, sparkling like tiny stars. The young man stood at the edge of the trees, feeling the cool air on his face. This place had become his home in many ways, not just because he had learned to live here, but because it had taught him how to live with strength and kindness. Around him, the group he guided was beginning to stir. Some were stretching and yawning, still sleepy, while others were already packing small bags, ready for the day's lessons. The young man smiled as he watched them. They had come from many places, some with heavy hearts and some with bright hopes, but all had one thing in common, a desire to learn and to grow. He called them together and spoke in a calm voice. "Today we will walk deeper into the forest. You will face new challenges, but remember what you've learned. Be patient, listen with your heart, and trust yourselves." The group nodded, some with nervous excitement, others with quiet determination. They walked slowly, the young man pointing out signs in the forest, the footprints of animals, the sounds of distant water, and the shapes of clouds above. Every detail was a lesson, a story waiting to be told. As they moved forward, the path grew steeper and the trees thicker. The sunlight struggled to reach the ground, creating shadows that danced and shifted. The young man stayed close to the group, watching faces carefully. He could see the moments when fear crept in and when courage blossomed. At one point, a young woman stumbled on a root hidden beneath the leaves. She caught herself but looked worried. The young man stepped over and gently said, "It's okay to stumble. That's how we learn to be steady." She nodded and smiled, grateful for the kindness. They reached a clearing where a small stream flowed gently. The young man knelt and scooped up water in his hands, letting it run slowly back into the earth. "Water is life," he said. "It teaches us to be flexible, to flow with the world instead of fighting it." He looked at the faces around him and saw understanding dawning. The group rested by the stream, sharing food and stories. The young man listened to their voices, feeling the bond growing stronger. After the break, they began their climb up a small hill. It was harder now, the path rocky and uneven. Some in the group grew tired, their steps slowing. The young man walked beside them, offering words of encouragement. "Keep going. You are stronger than you know." When they reached the top, the view took their breath away. Rolling hills stretched out in every direction, the sun casting golden light over the land. The young man smiled, knowing that this moment was more than just a reward. It was a lesson in perspective. "We all have hills to climb," he said softly, "but the view is worth the effort." As they rested, the young man shared stories of the mountain man, how he had lived alone but had taught kindness and strength through his actions. He spoke of the $1 the scared boy had given, and how it had started a chain of trust and growth. The group listened quietly, inspired by the simple but powerful story. That night, around the fire, the young man looked at the faces glowing in the flames. He thought about how far they had come, and how far they still could go. "Remember," he said, "the forest is not just a place to survive. It's a place to learn who you are." The words hung in the air, and the group felt their meaning deep in their hearts. The young man knew his own journey was far from over. But with each person he helped, with each lesson shared, he felt the spirit of the mountain man growing stronger. He was no longer alone. The forest had become a family, a place where kindness, courage, and hope could grow. As the fire died down, the young man looked up at the stars once more. He felt ready for whatever the future held, knowing that the lessons of the past would always guide him. And with that, he closed his eyes, feeling the quiet strength of the forest around him and the warmth of the hearts he had touched.